Yesterday, news broke that Paul Manafort breached his plea deal with special counsel Robert Mueller and will no longer receive a lighter sentence as a result of a plea deal. Now, there is more breaking news today. The Guardian has reported that Manafort allegedly held secret talks with Julian Assange on several different occasions. Now, some of these talks took place well before the last general election and probably didn't have much to do with Trump. However, there was a meeting that took place more recently, and that could be something that Mueller is looking into. So according to The Guardian, a well-placed source, and this person wished to remain anonymous, has told The Guardian that Manafort went to see Assange around March of 2016. Months later, WikiLeaks released a stash of Democratic emails stolen by Russian intelligence officers. Manafort's first visit to the Ecuadorian embassy took place a year after Assange sought asylum inside, and that's according to two sources. Now again, and this happens often with the media. A source will come forward, a whistleblower will come forward, but they wish to remain anonymous in order to avoid any type of retaliation. But apparently, The Guardian has reviewed some documents that corroborate some of these accusations. A separate internal document written by Ecuador's intelligence agency and seen by The Guardian lists Paul Manafort as one of several well-known guests. It also mentions Russians. So those are the only details we know about the document that The Guardian has reviewed. But for WikiLeaks on its part, Julian Assange has completely denied meeting with Manafort, and he claims that this story is nothing more than a hoax.
Yeah, he says that the writer is a quote serial fabricator, and he's going to destroy the paper's reputation. So, well, obviously it's hard to tell who's telling the truth here. But lately, I have to confess that WikiLeaks has not had an astounding record. And I say that as a person who supported WikiLeaks for a long time. And I still do in a lot of regards. And so to me, this story is very interesting, but not in the way that everybody else is talking about it. Look, there's a couple of different possibilities here with Trump's campaign and WikiLeaks. First of all, this focus that Mueller seems to have on this issue is disconcerting to me, and I actually think that's the biggest story to come out of this. It doesn't look like Mueller's doing anything but focusing on, yeah, the collusion or the potential collusion during the campaign, but
okay, can we hold for a second?
Yeah.
So I just want to be clear about something that I think a lot of people in the press make the mistake of doing, okay? Mueller is very tight-lipped about this investigation. So much of what you see in the press is speculation or how members of the press perceive this investigation is going. We don't know what Mueller is specifically looking into or what he isn't specifically looking into. So maybe I have too much faith in him and maybe I'm wrong, but I do believe that he is looking into collusion, which is absolutely clear in all the stories that we've covered. But I do think that he's also looking into obstruction of justice and potential money laundering.
No, that's the part that I'm now growing more and more concerned about. I think the real issue is that Trump has been doing money laundering for the Russians for a long time. Now, do I pull that out of nowhere? No, I base it on stories that have been in the press about very questionable real estate deals that Donald Trump has done, and the Russians way overpaying. The only loan he could get was from a Russian bank after he went bankrupt for the 6th time. And it has the telltale signs of money laundering. But me seeing that from the outside does not prove the case. You would need a seasoned prosecutor, and you'd have to go back and track it and actually prove it eventually in a court of law. And that's what I was hoping that Mueller was doing, because it seemed out in the open to be something that required looking into. I am now worried that he is not looking into it, and he's only focusing on the collusion and the obstruction of justice. So, and why do I say that? Because I know the internal proceedings of Mueller? Of course not, right? You're right, Anna, he's very tight-lipped, we're guessing. But what am I basing the guess on? There's all this talk of he's going after Jerome Corsi and Roger Stone and now Manafort and the ties to WikiLeaks. All those guys are connected to WikiLeaks. Well, that goes to the issue of collusion. It doesn't touch money laundering at all. We have not seen any other than Manafort's money laundering, which is a separate issue, we've not seen any other witnesses being talked to by Mueller, and no leaks in that regard, no talk of former associates of Donald Trump in real estate, et cetera. So it would be really surprising if all of a sudden now, he comes out and says, yes, collusion, obstruction of justice, and wait till you see what I got on the money laundering.
But wouldn't you argue that proving that there was collusion is a means to an end? Because why would Russia go out of its way to help elect Trump, right? Like,
no,
what's
there's
in
a
it
great
for them?
reason. So look, I think that they also have, this tie with Trump for a long time, but remember, they're giving to Trump. So what is it that they're looking back for? One, I mean, man, did they get lucky that they stumbled into this guy who might even be an asset, being the president of the United States. But mainly, they hated Hillary Clinton. And why? Why do they hate the Democrats? And why do they hate Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama? Because Obama did the Magnitsky Act, which froze the assets of the Russian oligarchs connected to Putin. And so there's nothing that they hate more than their own personal money being frozen and sanctions upon them, the Russian people. They're like, yo, whatever, you should see what we do to them, right? But my money? No, that's why they're obsessed. That's why the Trump Tower meeting was about the Magnitsky Act, which froze their assets. And so Hillary Clinton was going to continue that. The whole point of putting Trump in place was lift the sanctions, lift the Magnitsky Act. That's why when the Senate voted 98-2 to continue the sanctions, Trump was like, I don't want to sign this thing. I don't want to sign it. It's not good. It's not good. Daddy told me it's not good, right? And then he was forced to sign it because they could override his veto. It was 98-2, right? And then he did not enforce it for an incredibly long time. What Russia has to gain is absolutely clear, right? And so now back to the WikiLeaks situation. If all Mueller has, because he was too careful and stuck to, okay, they told me to look at the election. I'm just looking at the election. I'm not looking at any other financial connections between Trump and the Russians. Then you're gonna have a case that's hard to prove. And I'll give you the one scenario in which it works. But in all the other cases, I think he stays in office. So look, if they say, okay, Mueller's got evidence that says the Russians stole the Democratic emails, which almost certainly happened. And WikiLeaks, through the Russians or however else, got the emails and printed them. So what? Trump stays in office. He's got nothing to do with that. If Trump is not connected to it, I would say not guilty. If it turns out Trump and some people on his team knew about it, but they didn't help in any way, that's also gonna be a not guilty, right? The only way that they can get him is if Trump, and that is what the Steele dossier suggests, if Trump personally and his team helped the Russians either steal or disseminate the stolen goods, and they knew ahead of time what they were doing. Okay, then they would get him. But even then, that is going to be a struggle for impeachment. If he was a regular person, you'd indict him and lock him up really easy. That would be a cakewalk, right? But when he's president of the United States and he's got 40% of the country acting like zombies, and the Republican Party is not going to want to let go, they're going to be like, oh, he gave it to WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks is media. They published it. What's the big deal? We're done with it. So I'm now significantly worried that I was wrong, that they would look into the bigger issues, and if this is what they get, he could walk.
Right, I think that he is likely to walk regardless of the outcome of the investigation. I think if he was proven to be laundering money for the Russians, Republicans have shown themselves to support Trump regardless of what he does, even if he's violating the Constitution. So I have no faith in the Republicans, I have no faith in Trump. And honestly, I don't know if the American people would be up in arms enough to do something, whether making Republican politicians pay the price politically or by protesting, I have no idea. But all I know is Trump has managed to do many terrible things, including a story that we reported on yesterday, but no one else seems to care. I mean, Trump pushed his cabinet to approve an order to allow the military to use lethal force on US soil in response to immigrants, okay? That is unconstitutional. Oh, but we're not paying attention to that though. There's so much going on. So I don't think that it's gonna matter either way. However, look, the big question that I personally have when it comes to this whole investigation and this whole allegation of Russian meddling is, why would Trump be loyal to the Russians? He's not loyal to anyone. And it appears that he is loyal to Putin no matter what, even when Putin has made fun of him on the international stage. So what is it? What do the Russians have on Trump that's essentially making the president of the United States a lapdog for Putin? That's what I want to know.
And that's also, other than look, I think if you can't see that he's a lapdog for Putin, I think you're trying really hard not to see it. And so to me, that's also obvious. But whether it's obvious or not, it doesn't mean anything unless Mueller can prove it. So I think it's because he's been money laundering for the Russians for a long time. All they have to do is give that evidence, and he's toast, right? I also think that I don't know about the tape in Russia. I don't know if that exists or not. If that's the case, that's another thing they could have on him. To me, that one's not obvious. It's just the Steele dossier, which I originally thought was too outlandish, has fortunately or unfortunately been proven right almost on everything else. So maybe that's true. Maybe that's what they have on him. Or if he colluded with the Russians in the campaign, well, that's another thing the Russians would have on him. So there's three different things that could easily make him compromised by the Russians. The fact that we have a president who might be compromised by another country is unreal. And so, but guys, that's all fine and good. But does Mueller have enough, not for Democrats, but for Republicans to say, no, you got him, he's got to go, okay? And so right now, if it's not the money laundering in the past, then you only have two possibilities, and they're connected to this story. One possibility is what the Guardian reports here, which is Manafort, right around the time when he was chosen to be campaign manager of Donald Trump, went and talked to
Julian
Assange in the embassy in London, the Ecuadorian embassy. Jesus, why would Trump's campaign manager talk to Julian Assange, who then leaked the stolen documents? I mean, that is super questionable. I don't know if the Guardian is right, but if the Guardian is right and Mueller has that information, well, that is the one scenario where that would be direct collusion between the Trump campaign and the people who leaked the documents. So that could be one way of getting him. And then the last thing is that Trump server in Pennsylvania, there's no way in the world that it got pinged by a Russian bank, Alpha Bank, over and over again, and it's a coincidence. There are no coincidences that large. I don't know if Mueller found out what that communication between Alpha Bank and the Trump server in Pennsylvania was. If he did, then he got him, because it's not a Russian clothing company, it's not a Russian airplane, it's a Russian bank. It's a Russian bank constantly talking to a Trump server in Pennsylvania, and Trump comes out and says, oh, it was probably spam or a coincidence. No way, no rational person believes that. So those are your two hopes. Otherwise, he survives, and then he will be emboldened. If you thought he was bad now, wait till you get a load of him after he's emboldened. So buckle up.
I would like, and I hope this is happening, but I'm not naive enough to think it is. I would like Democrats who are currently in office to focus their efforts on fighting him politically, rather than focusing too much on or putting too much weight behind the outcome of this investigation. Because if you put all your eggs in that basket, you're in a lot of trouble. And I think that even if, as Cenk mentioned, collusion is shown, the investigation shows evidence of that, I don't think that Republicans are going to do what it takes to get rid of him, to impeach him. I just don't. Yeah. I mean, again, they have let him get away with all sorts of constitutional violations. And I have no doubt that they would do the same in this case as well.
Last thing on WikiLeaks. Look, I think them publishing the emails, if there was not collusion between the Trump team and the Russian team and they knew it, right? If you divorce it from that, I think that that's their job. And so I do not agree with the Democrats, and I do not agree with the rest of the mainstream media that they're the boogeyman for publishing it. Washington Post would have published it, New York Times would have published it. I don't particularly care that it was WikiLeaks who published it. Now, on the other hand, the way that Assange seems to be backing Donald Trump over and over and over again, it makes me very seriously question Assange's efforts to actually be a journalist and not to be a partisan. And I get it. I get why he hates the Democrats. They're trying to put him in prison. Okay,
right. But
at the same time,
so are Republicans. Let's be clear about that.
And now the Republicans are too, and they have been in the past. But it seems like Assange has picked a side, and look, it makes me question his reporting, and so that's the situation we're in now. So now is he just leaking things that he gets, and no matter what? In which case I would respect that. Or is he selectively leaking based on his political motives? Now that suspicion is out there and it's real and it's possible, well, now I'm concerned that it can't be trusted. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.